going on? This is OnDeck, and recently on a video I posted, a subscriber asked me if I was using a master compressor on my track while I was making the beats. And I want to go through that a little bit more in detail because this is a very helpful trick. The short answer is yes. The reason is it allows me to know where I need to add more layers, or if I need to add more layers. If you struggle with knowing where to add layers or knowing when the beat is done, then stay tuned. I'm going to go through a beat of mine, I'm going to break it down, and then I'm going to explain how keeping a master compressor going is a good way to help you finish your beats. Okay, so let's get right into it. What I'm going to do is break down this track. This is a track that I'm working on with a rapper that goes by Lord Shane. I knew I wanted something a little bit slower, so I chose a 76 BPM, and I wanted something that feels kind of grimy and punchy. I was looking around and I found this sample here. Now, I won't play the whole thing, but there's a lot of those guitar chords you can hear and those swelling strings in the background. I went through that. And I found some chops. And I put together a little arrangement. But first, what I did was I started with the drums here. Even when I find a sample, and I know I'm going to use a sample, I'll first sequence the drums. Because if I just play the sample here, I'll show you. Like, it's nice, but you probably wouldn't program that unless you had some sort of backbone to bounce off of, because it feels a little too minimal. Now let's go to the drums here. It's very simple. I just wanted a really simple, punchy drum loop. It's just hat, snare / rim, and a layered kick. And that goes something like... There's little switch ups and variations, but honestly, that's the main loop. So once I had that down, I was able to find my sample pattern by bouncing off of that. Then, if I take off this filter here, you'll notice it does have that really nice bass sound to it, but it wasn't really doing enough for me. Like, it was just playing that one note. So I decided to filter it out and play my own bass. It's a Rickenbacker from the Native Instruments Rickenbacker bass. I have a sample of that I often use as a key group. So that one will go like this. So I like that bass line a lot more because it uses more notes in the scale, and it goes between two different octaves, so it just feels more interesting. Even when I'm using the root note and I go up, it just feels better to me. Now, after I had that, it was time to throw on some layers. I have the backbone of the track, I'm ready to go, but I really need to know what spaces I have to fill in and how it's going to sound at the end when I start mixing and mastering and stuff like that, which is why I love to use this SP404. All my samples go in it, into the MPC, and my MPC goes out into the SP. The good thing about this is I can just turn on the compression by pressing this enter knob and hitting the bus effects button at the same time. You can already hear it triggering because I have it set on 303 vinyl sim compression, and there's some noise in there. Now, the settings are not like a static thing. They're gonna change every time. This is what I have as like a default. I can listen to this, and then I can throw on the compressor. I have the compressor on, those low and low mid frequencies, they really feel filled up, and I can double check that with the compressor. But there's a lot of room in the higher frequencies. And don't forget, there's always ways you can pan things to the side. So it's not always about level and frequency. We got to keep in mind our panning. The next thing I added here was a pad layer. It's from a synth on my iPad. It's called King of FM. It's basically just the root note played an octave apart. And when you add it, it really fills in the beat. It's being used as like a long texture or like a long pad sound. So let me play it with the pad in here. Now with the compressor, I hear that and I feel like the low to mid frequencies are taken care of. It just feels really nice in there. I have some of this panned out so it's not really fighting with the sample. And then I can keep going. I have this little thing that pops in here and there. I think it's pretty low in the mix in the final version, but I'll show you anyways. I came across this one track here and just took little snippets of it. That's it. Simple as that. Now, if you hear that with the beat, you're gonna think it's not gonna fit. Like, I'll show you. The good thing about having samples run through the SP is I can throw on a filter. So instead of having the dry sound, I can... So it's only taking up the higher frequencies. It's not going to fight with the sample that's already in there. Now, if you are just using an MPC, if you don't have an SP or like a DJ mixer or something that goes into this, no problem. I'll show you on this sampler page. You can also just add an insert and then use a filter yourself like this. So it's just these little, with a lot of delay and reverb. We're not going to solo that. We're just going to go on to the next one. These are more substantial layers. So check this out. With the compressor on, we'll double check. Sounds good to me. It's panned out to the sides, so even though it's occupying mostly a different frequency range than the sample and the pad, it's still good to create room. Now, I wanted one more thing, another melodic element that would feel good with this beat. So I came across this. I was listening to that with the filter on and just seeing how it was going to sit with the beat. And I really like the timbre of those horns. I pitched them to fit the key, which was F sharp major. And I played around with the order of those notes and I filtered them. Filtered out the low end a little bit harder this time, filtered out the high end. Lots of reverb and delay on there, and it sounds really quiet, right? But check this out. You see, it's not really that prominent in that one, but it is there and it is doing its thing. You can really hear it once the compressor goes on, which is why I always do this as a double check. It's easier to tell where these samples, instruments, whatever, are going to sit once you double check with the compressor. A good way to think about it is think about it like you're cooking or you're making a soup. You want to make sure that you have enough spices or enough ingredients. So maybe you put some spices in, take a little sip, you make sure it tastes right. So it's kind of the same concept here. You know, I add something, I throw on the compressor, I play it, take out some frequencies if needed, and then I either keep it or discard it, try something else. It's a lot of, you know, back and forth with the compressor, which is why I like having such quick access to it. As simple as that. I'd be listening to it back with the master on, and then you can get into more mixing and mastering. So mix it into the compressor. It's going to change up your levels a little bit. What might feel way louder than everything else actually ends up sitting back down, and what feels too quiet may actually be, you know, right in the pocket or even too loud. I even added just a tiny bit of soft clip and channel strip on the master here. I forgot to add that I do have a couple little effects. Or like ear candy stuff. Sometimes I use stuff in the Apollo too, like maybe tape machine emulation or a tiny bit more SSL compression, but it's a case-by-case basis. Anyways, I'll just play the loop one more time and we'll finish this up. The compression is going to sound something like this. So it does a great deal to tell you where things are actually going to sit once you're done making your beat and you're starting to mix and master. To summarize, the reason I use a master compressor when I'm making a beat is to get closer to the final product, to double check, and to taste test in the sorts. Anyways, that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you next week with another video. Peace.